can a Christian practice/learn self-defense in the context of martial arts?
Okay, so we always talk about how these type of systems have both a kind of a physical component and a metaphysical component, right? There's moves you learn, and if you're trying to learn how, for example, to jujitsu fight, you're going to learn what to do when you're pinned a certain way. There really are. It's kind of formulas and strategies to gain position on somebody in ground fighting. So there's a physical aspect of it. And I think almost every officer who is training right now in America is learning some form of adapted martial arts, either in ground fighting or in takeaway maneuvers or in all kinds of these things that we learn, right? And never in any of that is there ever going to be any discussion of the metaphysical claims that might have been part of that system. Officers have no idea what the claims are, what the spiritual claims even are related to. They're just learning the physical moves. So I think in that sense, that yes, of course, you can learn self-defense without embracing the views that come along with that. And I think as we go through this, you're seeing more and more dojos where probably all they are doing is focusing on the physical nature of the discipline rather than. But I'm sure it varies from dojo to dojo. So, but I think what my concern would be is, of course, are claims about reality and worldview issues. And are you able to do this without? I believe, like you, that the Christian worldview describes reality the way it really is. That's another shameless plug for Greg's book. But I'm only saying that because Greg wrote a book called Reality. Okay, so, but honestly, we think it does reflect the way the world really is, and so therefore, I would not want to move toward any other worldview because it would be a lie. It's not going to reflect the world the way it really is. So I think it's. I don't even think there's a risk. The people I know who are become really good ground fighters, I've got several friends whose only job now, I mean, they work in law enforcement, but they have these businesses where they are teaching defensive tactics at any different level, and they're teaching a lot of the techniques that come out of the martial arts, and never are they marrying these techniques to spiritual or metaphysical ideas at all. They're just looking at the physical side of it. So yes, is it possible? I would just be hesitant to, when you see that what you're learning is more than just a technique to do something physical, but is in fact a view of the world which is not consistent with the Christian worldview. That's where I would probably draw the line.
Okay, so let me turn the question around a little bit, just in case he was asking a question about theologically.
You can't just accept that answer, can you? You have to. You have to make it harder on me by change. Go ahead. So,
what do you think about just in terms of self-defense? Period, because I know there are some who are against that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that. So I've written about this quite a bit at Cold Case Christianity, just because I get this question a lot, and I do think it's very reasonable to be in a position of, because what we're trying to do here is there are times when you are going to be in a moral dilemma where you're going to have to make a decision. Do I allow a greater evil? Am I going to have to do I have to do something right now that on its face, just on paper, I would not want to have to do? But if I don't do it, an even greater evil is going to take place. If I could punch a guy in the side of the head and stop him from shooting 5 kindergartners, would I be willing to punch this guy in the side of the head? Would you do? You might say to yourself, well, on its face, the act of punching someone in the side of the head, but of course that's just taking it without justification. Is there ever a moral justification for acting with aggression to stop a greater evil? And I think I've talked about this in the writings at Cold Case. I think there are biblical examples of this, and I think this is not something that we should ever run from. Of course, it is harder. We have to make the justification. We have to weigh the justification.
How to respond to the claim that churches focus so much on homosexuality but not adultery, even though adultery is in the 10 Commandments?
Right. So I think what we do is we find ourselves speaking to the issues that are most pressing. And I wish, actually, I don't even think that many pastors are speaking about homosexuality in the pulpit. I could be wrong. But my sense of it is, and maybe you get a better sense of this, talking to a lot of pastors.
I think in the area where I am, I rarely hear it talked about. But I wonder about
I'll actually bet you that more pastors are comfortable in engaging issues related to adultery than they are homosexuality.
That I guarantee.
Okay, so it's really kind of the flip on this. Regardless of that, I would say that in every culture, in every moment in culture, we are probably talking about those things that pose what we think is the greatest threat to worldview. And so it wouldn't surprise me if a lot is being written and talked about, and at least fretted about, related to some of these issues related to gender identity, homosexuality, and same-sex marriage issues. I think we would say probably some attention's being given to that right now, because that's the moment we're in. If you go back 30 years ago, that was not the moment we were in. And the moment we were in was really about kind of open marriages and the decline of marriage, no-fault marriage. These were the no-fault divorce, rather. These were the kinds of things that were pressing against the ethics of the church. And so I think more people were probably wringing their hands, and they didn't even think of this as being an issue we'd ever have to discuss. Mm-hmm. But here we are in this moment. And so I think that's probably why. But I still don't think the statement's even really true. I think that churches aren't focusing, they're skipping and avoiding it. Or there's only three ways to react to this, right? One is to be silent. That's probably what most churches are doing. Two is to acquiesce. There's some percentage of churches that are probably acquiescing. And then third is to say, look, folks, this is what the Bible teaches on this issue, and they're going to push back a little bit or a lot. And I bet you, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the smallest percentage. Mm-hmm. I could be totally wrong on this. I don't have any statistics to back it up. My own anecdotal sense of it is that most churches are silent, and I wouldn't be surprised if more denominations and groups are acquiescing on the issue than are pushing back.
I think if there started to be a huge movement where people were saying adultery was not wrong and adultery was celebrated, you definitely see Christians talking about that. And I can see that happening. Yeah, I can too. Well, we already see now. I scanned through all of the most popular op-ed and opinion pages nationally, every paper, New York Times, to whatever it is. I do that every single day. And I do see more and more articles, for example, on polyamory or on issues of open marriage. Right? You see this a lot more because this is where this is heading. And I think as we head in this direction, you will see those become discussions in the church. Not too long ago, Greg actually read an article from a Christian. I put in quotes because I don't know, but and it was defending polyamory. Right. So I think you're gonna see this is the battleground of the future. But I think again, why do we pick certain battlegrounds? That's what the question is here. And we pick those battlegrounds based on what we feel the battle is in that moment. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are today. But I honestly don't think that many pastors are even addressing the issue. I think and I think in response to that, what I would ask the person, if someone is claiming to you that churches are focusing so much on homosexuality and not on adultery. Right. What I would ask is, where are you seeing Christians focus on this? My guess is it's not in church services. It's probably on TV. Or in social media. In social media. Yeah, so it's probably people, a very small subset of people who are specifically being asked about it or are being promoted, their views being promoted by the media about it. It's probably not from church services. So maybe you could use this as an opportunity to say, hey, you want to come to my church service and see what it's actually like and see what we actually talk about? I think a lot of people think we talk about politics in church, and that's not how it is. At least that's not how it is in my church. No, I agree. And some people would argue that it needs to be... I try to be the most apolitical person, but I'm not ignorant of the issues. I just don't want to divide along political lines because I'm never a big fan of people who run in parties. And if we really wanted to find a party that agreed with everything we thought, we'd have to have as many parties as there are people. Or now I might pick a party that agrees more with me than the other parties. So I might say, well, Amy Hall's got a party, and I like her views. We don't agree on everything, but she's far closer to my views than anyone else I know. Well, now guess what? Every time you say anything, I'm going to be judged by what you said because you are an Amy Hall. You're part of her party. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that Amy says, but she's closer to me on these issues than other parties, and that's why I'm in her party. So the point I'm trying to make is that I think that we sometimes get lumped in, and just because you see a Christian who's ranting about something, and isn't it always that case where we are the smallest percentage who are vocal? We call this nut picking, right? So what we'll say is that person is a nut, and all of you are Christians too, therefore you're all nuts.
when in fact it may just be that we've got a crazy person speaking at that time. So, but again, in this issue, I think that this is an important issue, homosexuality, and it's not a nutty issue. But I think that I wish more of us were addressing this, and I don't think it's happening in the pulpit.